Hi, Maureen's on.
Okay, excellent. Ah, some familiar faces. All right. Okay, 1 minute warning. Trustees, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I hear the trustees, please.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Well done. Maureen?
I'm here.
John, you're off. Let's see. Hi, Paula. McHugh is there. And who are we missing? Hello, John. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, and we have a quorum. So as soon as Alan Barnett is here, we can get started. And let's see, I'm just going to stop here for a minute while I pull up my documentation. All right, let's get started. I'd like to call this evening's special meeting on the budget to order. Let's rise for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I'll call the roll call this evening. Trustee McHugh?
Present.
Barnett?
Here.
Gluck? Paul, turn on your mic, please. There you go. I see you, so you're accounted for. Mayor McFadden, present. All right, so I want to welcome everybody to the Board of Trustees meeting this evening.
You forgot it.
I'm excited to have you with us.
Thank you.
During the meeting, the public hearings and the public comment periods, your microphones are muted. Please click the raised hand icon in the chat feature and you will join the queue to speak. When your microphone will be turned on when it's your turn. I regret these hearings must take place during self-quarantine and that we cannot conduct this meeting in person. Be assured, however, that we will take the time this evening to hear all of your comments. Please try and limit your comments to a few minutes. You will be addressed on a first come, first served basis. And if we unfortunately experience technical difficulty, we've been pretty good so far, please be patient and give us the opportunity to mitigate. Before we continue, there's a number of people I'd like to thank. And for those of you that have been listening to our meetings previously, you've heard some of these thank yous before, but I can't say them enough. I'd like to express first my deepest condolences to Father Cromie for the loss of his beloved wife, Pamela, and to their families. She will be greatly missed. I'd also like to express my concern, condolences, and best wishes to the residents that we've had in the park that have had and beaten Corona. Our police officers, 2 of them who have gotten and beaten Corona, and their families. I'd like to thank all the residents for their cooperation in following the state, federal, and local guidelines to prevent the transfer of the coronavirus, and we've done a very, very good job. I would like to thank our Orange County government officials and leadership who we interface with frequently. I'd especially like to thank our own village employees, including the police department and chief. Remember, the chief just started with us before the coronavirus hit. He's doing an outstanding job, as all our other employees are as well. You guys have been standing on the front lines and letting us maintain a feeling of normalcy during this difficult time, and we can't thank you enough. Finally, I'd like to thank our fire, EMS, and healthcare professionals throughout Orange County for the risks they have taken on a day in and day out basis. We couldn't get through this without you. Okay, so I'm going to continue the public hearing on the 2020-2021 budget. First, I want to thank the trustees for finding 120 grand today. That will bring us under the cap, but it's not good enough. We can do better. Let's make more cuts to reach last year's tax rate. That is my goal. I documented this path forward, I call it, today in an email sent to the residents. And as the board meeting records show, the March 27th, 2020 draft budget presented to me by the trustees at the board meeting is significantly over the cap. At the same time, the trustees proposed legislation that would exempt the village from staying within the 2% cap. After the trustees presented the March 27th, 2020 draft budget, I met with Debbie, Jeff, and Dave, the department heads, and asked for a percentage decrease across the board in each department. And together, we were able to reduce expenses and stay under the cap. I presented the aforementioned cuts at the next board meeting. The trustees accepted some of the cuts, but not all. So unfortunately, as reflected on this current budget, April 8th, 2020, the budget is still over the cap. In the April 8, 2020 tentative budget, the total real estate property tax to be collected is $92,653 over the cap, which is the limit of $3,881,300. The tax rate would be $60.4 per 1,000 of assessed value, or a 5.46% increase in the tax rate over last year, but only 0.98% change in appropriations expenses. To meet the cap, we need to cut $92,653 for this budget. Hopefully, we can accomplish that this evening. I would like to find deeper cuts, though, so we can reach the same tax rate as last year, $56.93. That is more challenging, but I see a pathway forward. To do so, we need to find $205,000 by either reducing appropriations or increasing revenues, or a combination of both, which is in keeping with the $120,000 surplus already included. For discussion, I've organized an a la carte menu of potential cuts with the two goals I described: $92,653 to meet the cap. Goal 2, an additional $112,347 to meet last year's tax rate. That's a total cut of $205,000. So if you have it before you, I highlighted items on the following spreadsheet. Those items add up to $291,974, which exceeds the $205,000 needed to meet last year's tax rate. So I'd like to open the floor for public comments. And remember, what you need to do is open your chat box, which you can find at the bottom of the screen. And you can, oh gosh, my video wasn't started, I apologize. You can join the chat room by clicking the hand icon, and we will call on you in order. So do we have anyone in the chat area, John?
I don't see anybody right now, and I don't
Okay.
see anybody.
If you can't figure out how to use the hand,
We have
you can just
a
use your
couple
chat
hands
box to
raised.
type something in. Go ahead, John.
So Sally has her hand raised.
Great. Can you turn the mic on, please?
Sally, your mic's on.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not sure exactly what cuts that you had proposed, but I had some comments based on, oh dear, all these papers here. Some of the items that were sent by Debbie, and I guess from some of the board members. For instance, and some I just didn't quite understand. For instance, the $4,000 for the street cleaning using the Zamboni, I think that's what it is, which we own. And she said that that $4,000 was actually personnel, the people, I guess, driving it. Well, aren't these village employees who are doing this?
I can answer that question. The proposed cut is to eliminate street cleaning. We already own the machinery, so this would be
Exactly,
salary. Now, that's not a cut I have advocated for.
Well, but
Any other
no, but we
questions?
don't have, why do we have to eliminate it? We have the machine and we have the employees. So
I
what
agree. I agree, and I don't intend to
why are
eliminate
we-
it. You can
we-
ask
we
the other
eliminate the
trustees.
$4,000, yes, but we
Mhm.
don't eliminate streets cleaning.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
I agree with you. Maybe the other trustees want to speak to that because they put it on the original proposal for reductions.
So,
Well,
Please, Maureen.
yeah, I raised my hand earlier because you actually didn't give the trustees an opportunity to comment, unfortunately. Just so we're on the same page, Sally, to answer your question, as I understand it, these are not, the list that the mayor has put out is very similar to the list that was discussed at the Friday board meeting. And I think it's April 17th. And the Zamboni, I think that really relates to the fact that if you reallocate the employees' time, or if there's overtime involved with street cleaning, that's the amount of money that can be cut out of the budget. Even though they're employees, they have other jobs that they're doing all the time, so there's additional work to be done. But the important things that I want to make sure people understand are, one, some of the numbers are not exactly accurate, but goal number one, as the mayor has put out, because of, first of all, the preliminary budget that was voted on by all the trustees, including the mayor, is a preliminary budget. We put it out there for public discussion, and we're continuously working on that budget. And as a result, the board liaisons and the department heads, looking back on expenditures for the year and what's anticipated to occur between the month end and the end of the fiscal year, it looks like that there's been significant cost savings, thanks to the department heads and the board liaisons, but also thanks to the mild winter. So reevaluating and reanalyzing the amount of money of surplus that we could reallocate to the budget actually will take us, potentially, if the board agrees to it, would take us down to below the tax, at or just below the tax cap to begin with. So I think the discussion today is, and what that means, and we can go through it if people don't understand. I sent a email to a lot of people, hopefully everyone, of somebody on this, and it was from Debbie Matthews, but the trustees asked me to summarize what was going on and send it out, because we promised to do that our last meeting. And the point from that meeting, from that letter, there's a discussion about how the surplus works. And it's sort of like a reserve ultimately, and there's guidelines about how much you should have in reserve in case bad things happen or unexpected repairs, which unfortunately has happened year over year. So it now appears our budget currently has $120,000 in the surplus allocation, or allocation from the surplus. Even if we raise that to $213,000 or so, we'd still, because of these cost savings that have been identified, we'd still be able to be at or below the tax cap. So I think goal number one is, the great news is that goal number one is that we are not going to be exceeding the tax cap. So the board, when it adopted the preliminary budget, it was a work in progress. We have until May 1st to finalize the budget. And that's what we've been doing. And the good news is that the updated information is because of surplus, because of cost savings, we're able to not exceed the cap. So now the question is, as we discussed at the last board meeting, Sally, and you were there, was, okay, if we wanted to reduce the tax base, the taxes even further, how could we achieve that? And a lot of the things we're going to talk about have consequences, and that's why we sent out that email to everyone, telling them that the items that we discussed at the special board meeting last Friday, and the positives, which is the cost savings, and the negatives is the adverse impacts, so everyone knows about it. But I've answered your question and more. Hopefully, hopefully we can just now focus on, since the tax cap has been achieved, at least once the board votes, it will be. Then we go to reducing the residents' appetite for reducing taxes even further, but understanding the consequences.
All right, just
Yes.
to explain to everyone the difference between the proposed cuts that I sent out and you sent out. Mine has additional cuts on it that were not contemplated in the one that the board developed together. And also, I think we split a little bit when you used your definitions, in my opinion, to express opinion about the cause and results of the cuts. I tried to make it neutral. And if you look at mine versus yours, you'll see that it is not like a survey that leads you into one direction or another. And unfortunately, when we discussed that, we split on that, and that's fine. So I think we have an opportunity to look at all of the suggestions and see how far we can get. And my goal, as I mentioned, first of all, I think it's great you found this 120, and I'd like to talk later about why that happened this afternoon, but we can do that. What I'd like to do, though, is reach last year's tax base. In other words, bring it down another few $100,000 to where you're suggesting today. So hopefully, if I get some support for that, it'd be terrific. Now, I also agree with this 120 coming into play now. The great news there is that we no longer have to pass the local law 1 introductory of 2020, which gives us the ability, an exemption to go over the cap. So that's fantastic. I think that's something that I've been concerned about quite a while, and I think everybody has. So that's terrific. So before I open up to the floor again, does anyone else want to comment from the trustees?
Oh, just to be
I
clarification.
hadn't finished.
Pardon me?
Just a point of clarification. It's not 120, Mac. It's 93, right? If you
No, I know what the 93 is. Yeah,
that's
I know what the 93 is. The 93 is what we need to deduct from the April 8th budget to get down to the cap.
right. So the
Thank you.
surplus is not, the additional surplus is not another 120. Currently, the budget has 120 in it. It's going to get to 113.
I realize. Yep. I appreciate the clarification.
200.
All right. So shall we open it back up to the floor? John, what do you see in terms of hands?
I had not finished. I'm sorry.
Sally is.
I was interrupted basically in the middle of some of my questions. May I continue, or do you want me
Please,
to go
Sally,
later?
please do.
Okay. Well, I had one other question, and I just want an answer to this. It was very hard to tell, and even from the additional information that Debbie sent to me, this is just a simple yes or no question. Are the village employees given salary increases on the new budget? Just,
Eh,
can the board tell
Is
me
that
this?
a question or a statement of fact?
I'm asking you, yes or no, were they given increases or not?
Non-union, the answer is no. Union assumptions were made based on what labor agreements they are going through within Orange County.
Okay, that was my question. I did have another, I agree with Max that I think most of the residents really would like to be not only absolutely under the cap, but really down to a budget that isn't increased this year. We have to just maybe take some inconveniences, although I don't really think they will be. The one that we've talked about, and I know it requires renegotiating, but this garbage contract, and there's one thing that was said, I think Maureen said this, and it just, to me, it makes no sense. That cutting back to 1 day a week for garbage collection, as opposed to 2 days, will not result in a cost savings because this is based on man hours. Well, man hours, a whole day of someone driving a truck around and the truck, surely that's a lot of man hours. Surely it is less, we will pay less for this. We may have the same amount of garbage. In other words, my garbage can will be filled a little more than it is now when it's about a third filled. That requires no more man hours. If someone has 2 cans instead of 1, it requires maybe 1 minute more to put that in. That's no more man hours. So that statement just made absolutely no sense to me. And then years ago, we used to have it that if you wanted concierge service, you signed up and you paid an extra fee. And that was dropped. And so many people are not even here during the week. I think we're just paying a lot of extra for nothing. And I think that should be renegotiated. Now, especially since we have a fairly robust, the recycling. You know, we put in all newspapers and cans and bottles and plastics, and there's really much less to pick up for the garbage. I even compost, so there's really not much at all. And I just think we're paying a lot of extra for that, and that is one thing that should be renegotiated.
May I
also
cut
wanted
in,
to ask
Sally,
you,
just for a moment, please? I want to go back to Alan McHugh, who mentioned that we would be dealing with raises with the union folks when we renegotiate their contracts, which is true. Both of them are coming up, the police and the DPW. But I wanted to ask Alan a question. Aren't you also including raises for other staff that are non-union?
I asked the question and he said no.
No, he mentioned no to the union.
Oh, no, he said no.
No. Yeah.
He said no, no one who
That's
wasn't.
correct.
In other words, so you're not giving any raises to the employees in your budget?
That's what I asked.
That's what Sally asked, and that was my response. Correct.
Okay, because that's not what we're showing on the budget.
It
It
is.
shows that Jeff gets an increase.
Yep.
And other things. So I guess we'll just go off on a sidebar on that and get back to Sally. All right, who else has their hand up? Well, please, Alan, yeah.
Yeah, well, let's be clear. The assumptions were non-union, no salary increase, a union, what the collective bargaining agreements that have been recently struck, the increases are reflected there.
Okay. Okay. Understood. All right. Who else has their hand up? If you don't know how to do your hand icon, if you press the chat button at the bottom, you can actually send us a chat with your question.
I don't see a chat button.
So I think,
Okay, John, do you mind explaining?
yeah, so on your Zoom main screen, there's a couple features on the bottom, such as your microphone, your video camera, and then you should also see participants and chat. If you click those 2 icons, something will pop up on the right side of your screen.
There is no chat.
Yeah, there's no chat. I wonder if, Paul, maybe you didn't turn it on?
I don't see a button to turn it on. It may be off by default.
Mhm.
John, do you know how to turn that on?
No, wait a minute. We agreed with advice from council not to have the side chat because everything that's stated and everything becomes part of the public record. And we had some issues the last time with the chat. So Brian advised that we do not have that chat.
Right, but we have no choice but to have a chat box so people can open their, can send a thumbs up to speak. So that seems to have been lost in the.
Procedurally, Mayor, if there was
Yes.
Mayor, there was an email from Brian, I believe, that which he explained all this and suggested that if you're not having the chat button active, that you can poll the people that are on by phone and ask individually whether they have a comment.
Okay,
People can
let's
raise
do
their
this.
hand.
Let's start with a show of hands. Let me just
Wait a
go
minute.
around the horn. I got 64 people on here, and let's start with John Cassis. Turn on his mic, please.
Mayor,
No.
may I make it easier for you, for us all? The people who are on video can raise the hand. That's a feature that
Right.
the people who are on voice can't do that. And perhaps you might conclude by seeing whether there are any other hands on video, and then proceed to people on the phone.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion. I actually had just said we're going to go by hands. And then for the people that are on the phone, we can just go one by one, turn on their mic for a minute, see if they have something to say. How about that, everybody? All right, John Cassis.
I
Turn his
agree
mic
with
on.
that.
Yes, sir.
I would, let's keep the taxes as low as possible. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Can I see some more hands?
I'd like-
Joanne, I think you had your hand up. Is that correct? Joanne, did you want to say something?
Yes, I want to say something from both the perspective of a resident and the perspective of the planning board. One of the big areas that's in the budget is the paving of the roads. And I think for many of us, our house is a major asset. And maintaining the roads creates a sense of a well cared for and a well-maintained community. And so I think that's really essential to maintaining our property values. And from the perspective of the planning board, what happens very often when we get into an economic crunch is we promptly stop maintaining our infrastructure, and that just ends up costing us more money down the line. The village and the trustees have developed a plan of consistent infrastructure maintenance, and I think it's important to go forward with that so that we don't, in fact, incur more money in the future by deferring things which then, break and cause emergencies. So I think maintaining, the village has gone to a lot of trouble to analyze infrastructure, what's appropriate, what needs to be maintained. And I think that it is penny wise and pound foolish to move away from that infrastructure maintenance plan.
Yeah, I agree. We have put a lot of time into a capital budget plan, including road maintenance, road repaving, et cetera. And under normal circumstances, we wouldn't be talking about it. But we're trying to reduce taxes, and that's just one of many options. I was thinking about it the other day too. We've actually just sold recently, or are in contract with some of our major properties, which is great news. And I don't think, obviously, that the road condition has deterred them from making offers. And if you look back over history, you'll see that we've never had every road looking great, and we've still sold houses. So that's just an observation I had, but I completely respect what you're saying. The trustees, yes, have worked hard to develop a road plan, and we recently spent a lot of time doing a capital budget, which includes many, many projects. One of the things we're about to do in this year's budget is pave Clubhouse Road. So that's already in the works. But I agree with what you're saying. There are pros and cons to lowering the road budget, but I think it should be on the table. Like all of these others, it's an a la carte menu to discuss. That's how I like to describe it. Between the trustees and myself, we probably have 15 or 20 choices to pick from. And when we finish our discussion, I'll show you what I have, the path I'm recommending for getting to last year's tax number. But I appreciate your comment. Anyone else with a
Yeah,
raised
I'd like-
hand?
Can you hear me?
Who do we have?
a chat. This is Jim Hayes. I don't,
Oh, hi, Jim. I can hear you. What's your question, sir?
well, I'd like to agree with Joanne, and I'm actually for increasing taxes because I think if you reduce them down to the point where you're kicking a lot of things down the road, then you're going to have 5% or 6% increases in future years, and they're going to be much more painful. A 2% increase on an annual basis or a 1.5% increase, something like that, is something I think that is probably part of running the village. And I think certainly in terms of road maintenance, the roads need to be maintained, and you're just going to, again, kick the ball down the road. As far as the lakes are concerned, I see, at least on one of the lists, that there was an option of not doing work in Weewa or in Pond 3 this year. I think that would be, particularly for Weewa, that would be a disaster. The milfoil has been reduced by the lowering of the water during the dam renovation. And so a great deal of ground has been gained. That ground can be lost if you don't work on it. It will cost you lots of money in the future, cost you little money now. So to save there is now no savings at all.
Well, thank you, Jim.
I'm for saying that you need to do the things you need to do, and people need to
Understood.
face up.
Understood.
This is
I
the
think
key.
that's a very good argument. Again, it's on the table and we can see what we can do without touching that. Everyone has their projects they're interested in, and I understand that. And I respect that completely. There is a question whether, I mean, in the proposal that the trustees have made, when they're talking about cutting paving, they're not talking about cutting paving completely. They're talking about paving the main arteries. And also it maintains a budget for potholes and other types of maintenance. So the one that I suggested in mine is even more dramatic, and it completely cuts out any paving. In other words, we are not even going to repave the main roads, which, by the way, I think are in pretty good shape. But the point is, if people would like to do that and the trustees agree, that is another option. All right. Thank you, Jim. All right. We have Walter Dean.
Okay, does the mic work?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for doing this call. I think the Zoom format should be used for every village meeting.
Love
and
it.
Hope everybody out there is healthy and safe in this terrible, terrible time.
Thank you.
When we add up the village and the school and the town budget, we're close to $25 million for a town that's, I think, 3,500 people. And, you know, we have a school, if you divide the budget by the number of students, it's close to $60,000 a child. And I think it's really important that the village lead, and we should lead the town and we should lead the school and say, look, we're cutting costs here. We know there's a crisis. We know there are a lot of people that are unemployed. We know that there are people that are having financial difficulty. We're cutting by 5 or 10%. We challenge you, school. Why don't you do the same? We challenge you, town. Why don't you do the same? But if we all just keep spending and spending and spending and increasing our budgets in the town and the village and the school, we're going to be totally out of business. We're going to be in a place where you can't sell any houses, where people don't want to move to, where there's no jobs that are being developed. You know, I love the Jehovah's Witness complex. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, but I don't believe it gives us taxes, etc. You know, we need to bring jobs to Tuxedo. We need to bring, we need to revive Tuxedo. And the village is dependent on the town, and the village is dependent on the school. And I don't think that we should raise the budget tonight or raise expenses tonight. And then those of us that are trying to be active in the town and the school say to them, oh, well, we raise it in the park behind the gate, but we want you to cut down in the town, or we want you to, you know, do something to reduce this per cost student, which is so ridiculous in the school. How can we say that if we're increasing our expenses? So I would just ask that you all consider somehow reducing expenses across the board, and we'll put Tuxedo in a stronger position, like Jim said, for the future, that we can actually do some more projects. But right now, at this time, in this crisis, I think we have to reduce costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Is there anyone here with the town and familiarity with the Jehovah's Witness situation? The reason I'm bringing it up is because something in the back of my mind says that in lieu of taxes, they're paying something like $500,000 a year. I don't know for sure, but we'll get back to you on that, Walter. Not that that changes your point.
No, and it's a beautiful complex for anybody that hasn't been up there. It's really an extraordinary place.
I heard, and they built it all with their own labor, and pretty amazing what they did. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Do we have anyone else with a question?
Mayor, it appears that there's several people with their hand raised as electronically, if you want to run down the list. The first looks like JHR.
Okay, do you mind leading that?
Sure, I'm not, JHR, I'm not sure the name, but I'm gonna unmute.
Thanks. It's Jay Reichcott.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
No problem. First, let me reiterate, saving money on paving roads and other infrastructure projects is only imaginary savings. It will come back to cost more by a significant factor in the future. And I say that from experience as a civil engineer. I think that the tax cap rate, percentage increase exists for the very real factor that things get more expensive over time. I think the fact that we found a way to get under the tax cap increase or to the cap increase is good. And I think that we don't want to cut our services and quality of life too much. That being said, I can offer a sort of devil's advocate position. We could really, really cut our tax base to almost zero. We could get rid of the DPW, we could get rid of garbage, and we could get rid of the cops. We could stop taking care of the roads and just, everybody could do their own thing. I got a lot of property, and we could also increase revenues by selling naming rights to roads and various pieces of, this beautiful view brought to you by put largest bidder's name here.
Well, there's two things we could do, and of course I'm being facetious. We could bottle our own water and sell that under the Tuxedo Park label. And we could also build something, maybe a casino in the racetrack, and everyone would get a check from the revenues instead of paying taxes. Those are ideas that I've explored, but I don't think we're going to be able to pull off. Thank you for your comment. Who else do we have?
Next up is Kim Kim,
how are you? Kim, please, Kim.
Hi. Hi, Mac.
Hi.
Hi, and thank you, everyone. I was addressing, my comment is to address the trash collection. And I could see, for me, I don't know, we're not up here during the winter. I realize there are many residents who are here full time. I don't know how it would be if you had collection in the winter months or the colder months, especially when the bears are hibernating, to once a week. But certainly I would think in the summertime, you'd be asking for more issues with interaction with the animals if you only go to one time a week. A lot of our trash, like our trash is a container outside. We put it and it's, housed somewhere else. Am I boring you? The other thing was I would be wary of reducing the police force to just one person in the evening. And what was my other, and the roads. And the roads, I think if you could cut, not to do the roads at all, I can understand is an issue, but I think if you could cut somehow that budget by 6%, that would be ideal.
I have to admit, I just was stepped away. Do any of the other trustees would like to address that comment?
Doesn't look like.
Okay. I'll circle back to you on that, Kim, because I didn't hear it. I had to leave because Jake came in to fix my video. I didn't know what I was doing. All right. Who else do we have?
Judith Novacek. I apologize if I butcher names.
Oh, it's okay, John. Don't worry about it. Judith?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. The one thing that I did notice was, as Kim said, the reduction in the police. I had 3 times this year, once when my husband had to go by ambulance to Hackensack Meridian, then when he passed away and a police officer had to come out to the house, and then I was ill a few months ago, and one of the officers came out to help. Excuse me. And that was just over the period of a year. And during those times, it would leave no one at the gate. And one of the reasons that I moved here was because I liked the idea of the safety and of the screening of people coming in and out. So that's an issue for me. As far as the roads, the biggest issue I have is with the striping. There are certain times of the year when it's pouring rain out and I can't see the line in the middle of the road. So that to me is more important than having, if there's a couple of potholes or, whatever. if I can see the road, I'm, in a lot better shape. So those were the two things that struck me. I'm here all year long, so I do like having the garbage twice a week, but I can see where in the winter months I could, I would be willing to cut back to once a week. I think in the summer months, because of the animals, because of the people, because of the heat and the smell and everything else, if we could do a seasonal thing, I would be okay with that. So those were the things that jumped out at me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Judith, on the police protection. Should be aware, I think all the trustees are aware that if any changes are going to be made to shifts, personnel, these things, it would have to be done via renegotiating the PBA contract. So that wouldn't even come into play for quite a while, but I'm hearing you loud and clear. I think most people would prefer not to use that as a cut.
Yeah, I like having that there's one who's roaming or available for emergencies while there's still somebody manning the gate.
Right, and that's what we have right now. We have 2 officers on duty at all times, covering all 3 shifts, so 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's done by full-time officers as well as part-time officers.
Right, and I would like to see it stay like that.
Thank you very much, Judith. Okay, who else do we have?
Next up is Meg Vaught.
Meg who?
Vaught.
Meg Vaught.
Hi,
Oh, I
can you hear me?
apologize. Meg?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I would just like to say that I agree with Joanne, Jim, and Jay with regard to not slashing infrastructure projects down to nothing. I think it'll end up costing us more in the long run. And along the same lines, I would like to point out that our gate and the fact that we are a gated community and we maintain our own police force is one of our largest assets. And in that regard, I would urge you to try to find the money to invest in rebuilding the traffic booth, which I think would bolster our security by 100%. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Let's see. Anyone else, John?
Yeah, next is Michelle Lindsay.
Michelle Lindsay, where are you? Michelle?
Hi.
Hi, Michelle. We hear you loud and clear.
Great. I just have to add my voice to John, Jim, Jay, and Meg.
Well said.
Okay, that, we do need to maintain our roads. And when you look at the savings, I'd rather pay the extra in taxes and rather than have the savings that are outlined here. So that's why I'm for not taking these things off the budget, keeping everything in. And then the other thing you had mentioned before was the Jehovah's. Now, their beautiful main buildings are not in Tuxedo. They're in Warwick. And they're the building they have at International Paper, if at the corner of Warwick Brook Road and Long Meadow Road, that is in the town. And we negotiate with them for projects. They don't send a check. They don't send a pilot. They do projects. Recently, they repaved Warwick Brook Road. So it's that kind of thing that they do. They do a project. They don't send money. But
understood. Thank you for clarification.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Paola.
Yes.
Okay,
Unmute.
There you go.
Okay. Hi, everyone, and thanks again for having this meeting via Zoom. I agree with Walter. I think it's a tremendous platform. My question is, it's a super tough economy right now, and it's not going to pick up soon. And especially if this virus does come back with the vengeance, which they seem to think might happen come the fall and certainly flu season. Has any thought been given to pay cuts? I know in my industry, which is the design and construction industry, which has been especially hard hit, people are being furloughed and pay cuts on average 20%. have been given pretty much across the board. So has any thoughts been given to any pay cuts of the staff that we have here in the village?
Thank you for the question. I'll defer that to a member of the trustees if they want to address that.
I think that there are two problems. That one is, as Alan pointed out, the vast majority of our employees, the DPW and the police, are in union. So you'd be negotiating with union to get a pay cut. With the, I think, 5 or so employees that are not unionized, they are some of our best employees. They're very valuable. They're very hardworking. And
I have a question of that.
What's that?
No, that's not, really the question, the point. I mean, I'm sure they are. I mean, if they weren't good employees, they would have been fired, I assume, or I would certainly hope. But I just think that, this is worse than the Great Recession, in 2007. And I don't understand.
Let me finish. One employee who's not in the union, who's part-time, has been let go, so there's a savings there. And Debbie Matthews is going to retire this year, and there's a possible savings there. But we have not considered reducing the salaries of the other 4 employees.
Just a list, we've got non-union, we've got the chief, we've got Jeff Voss, we've got Debbie, we've got John Ledwith, and of course the part-time officers.
Sorry, that's my dog. I guess he doesn't like what's being said.
Dogs are always calming influence. Okay, so John, do we have anyone else?
Yes.
Well, wait a minute. I just would like to finish. I mean, I really do think that it should be considered. I mean, even if it's, $5,000 or $10,000, multiply that by 3, that's 30 grand. I mean, I just think that, it should be considered.
Thank you, Paula. Noted.
You're welcome.
John, I see that I've got a total of 3 separate screens. If I scroll from right to left, there's a whole bunch of more people. When you're asking if people have something to say, can you see all of those people?
What I'm going off of right now is the participants raise their hands, and then at that point, I can see the videos and go through any additional people if you'd like.
Okay, we'll do a sweep at the end. I see that the Razienkos, the tandem, has something to say. Now, turn on your mic, please. Thank you.
Are we on?
Yes, sir.
First of all, I think you guys are very, you have an unenviable job, which is to tackle a village budget of an old village, which has a lot of infrastructure and other issues and other demands. And this is not an easy one. And I sympathize fully with you. The big problem is that if we're in the context of a state, which is one of the highest tax states in the union, and generally, I think that with the amount of spending that's going on at federal and state level, those numbers are going to keep going up. And I think I would personally like to see all of the trustees here become real heroes and sort of create a knock-on process. Walter alluded a bit to that by saying if we should give an example that we can really tighten our belts at a difficult time like this, that other people might be forced, if not willingly, but at least feel the pressure to do the same, which can almost make our situation better. So I think I certainly understand the need for prioritizing expenditures. Roads, yes, I understand that. Lakes, yes, I understand that. But we also need to look at it in maybe a context of a several-year budget. Maybe a road doesn't have to be repaved every year, maybe once every 2 years. And depending on the amount of traffic that goes on it and the priority, I don't know whether that's something that you already do. It probably is. But I think many expenditures like that could be addressed on a longer term cycle than just year to year. And I encourage you all to be not only heroes, but superheroes. We're all in this together.
Thank you very much, Paul. Chauncey, did you want to add on to that? Oh, someone's sleeping?
No. Paul said what needed to be said here.
Okay. Who else do we have?
Christopher Meehan.
Chris Mahan. How are you, Chris?
Apologize.
Hey, Mac. So thank you for having this session. I think it's very helpful for everybody that you're doing this. I, first of all, would make sure we started the conversation saying that we wouldn't need the increase above the cap. And I hope that that is something that the trustees would move on. And if it was passed, would make sure that that's eliminated and that the budget comes in at no more than the cap. I think that is fundamental in times like this. I would also recognize the need for a strong police to protect us. That's one of the strengths of the communities. I think the roads have increased the paving, which has been noticeable over the next number of years. The question is, I think, we need to keep paving and we need to maintain our infrastructure, but we need to do it at the current rate. I'd also add something that nobody's really talked about, which is the fees that we charge for the people who are using things on a variable basis. I don't see why we wouldn't charge if people want concierge service. I think that's an option that people might want to have. But charging people who want people to come up to their house as opposed to leaving it at the end of the road, I think is a very reasonable thing. Some of these other fees, when they're talking about tags for boats, which are optional, and why aren't we doubling them as opposed to increasing them by 10%? They go into lakes and other things, and we need to support those things. The same thing with the people who are using the WeWa, the beach club, the fishing club, other things, increasing those fees in a meaningful way. So the people who are benefiting from some of the things that we're spending money on are also having to carry the boat, but we're not raising taxes across the board to be able to do that. Now, those aren't going to make a massive difference, but they can make some difference and allow us to continue to make some of those investments, particularly the more specialized ones that are not used by everybody within the community.
Yeah, thank you very much. Those are very good points. I think I can speak for some of those. I think the people that have properties around the lake, the main lake, feel that they already pay enough property tax and they're satisfied with a small fee, but they're not really gung-ho on paying a lot more for their boats because they believe they have a high property tax. That should be figured in. That's their opinion. In terms of the Village Boat Club, they're strongly against a fee increase. We just received a letter from the president, Gregory Libby, where he expressed that. I do agree, though, and I'm speaking for myself, we charge the WeWa Beach Club, I think it's $1 in payment for the lease. There seems to be some room there. But the budget that I'm proposing this evening, which we haven't gone through yet line by line, does not require any fee increases to get to the number I want to get to. And in a sense, that might be appropriate because people sometimes perceive those as actually a backhanded tax increase. But again, it's open for discussion and I appreciate it. Yes, Mrs. Laura Denberg. Can we open her mic? Give us a minute. You got that one?
Got it. Okay.
There we go. Hi.
Hi, quick question. So are we contractually obligated to have a police force down there? So someone was concerned about not having 2 people at night man the desk. If we for 12 hours had like a private securities firm who, if a police officer had to leave, we wouldn't be paying them, we would just be paying them hourly, like a private security person. So at least someone is at the main desk, but we're not paying a police officer. Is that something anybody's discussed?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. Again, I can't be positive. I'd have to check with the attorney, or maybe John Kussler knows. He's with the attorney's office. I think that might have to be negotiated with the union. And I know that there's an issue because, you know, a prior mayor laid off the people that were working in the booth. And there's some issues related to that that may have to be resolved before we can actually seriously consider that. However, I do believe that there might be a union issue. John, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Mayor, you're absolutely right. There's definitely a union issue there. The village negotiates collective bargaining agreements, and that includes, certain types of work and shifts of work and hours of work and so forth and so on. And so as part of that, certain employees are entitled to certain things. And there is pending matters that relate to the booth that are still, we're waiting for decisions. And so as those matters get resolved, maybe in the future, the board can address those issues as they come up. But so.
Yeah, Laura, I mean, obviously we could replace the entire police force and after litigation might be able to pull it off. But I think that it's almost like the third rail, if you know what I'm talking about in politics. Nobody, I don't think anybody at the present time would like to give up the police. It would be a huge savings, but it would probably be very difficult to pass. Okay, who else do we have?
It looks like Claudio.
Claudio, how are you? Do we have a mic on for Claudio?
Yes.
Do you hear
Hi,
me?
Claudio, how are you?
Hi, Mac. It's good to see you. Thank you for the excellent spreadsheet you sent around, for the suggestions. They're very well thought of. I can see there's a lot of work that went into that. I'm just hoping the trustees get a chance to read your fine work, because there's a lot of things in there that made a lot of sense. Sally Sani mentioned at our last meeting that a lot of the great castles, a lot of the great estates in Europe really, don't have a finely paved road leading up to the main manor house. But that's old money, and that's old world.
Right.
There, in my opinion, there are primary road, secondary, and tertiary road. And like I said at our last meeting, I live on a tertiary road, and I do not expect it to be paved every year. I think the primary road probably needs to be paved every year, but there's a lot of people hurting, Mac, out there, and I think the next 6 to 9 months are going to be very tough on people, a lot more than what you all are planning for. I mean, this economy has been really ruined in a very big manner. And we have to think about, the people who are getting hurt here and how much they can afford to pay going forward. So even if we don't have our roads all perfectly smooth and shiny, I think for 1 year we can live with that.
Thank you. I think that, people might be willing to deal with the roads, but I think the main issue is that maybe preventing purchasing and selling isn't just the roads. You've got that $100,000 deductible for mortgages and many other things that have been put in place that are an impediment to buying in Tuxedo Park. And as well, we could do the roads, but can we put a town right outside the gate? And that's difficult too. So there's a lot of things that would have to be overcome as part of a package of helping us sell property. I don't know if the roads alone is going to make a giant difference, but it's a good point. Other people have made great points about the roads, and we're certainly open to hear those points. Thank you, Claudia. Anyone else?
Yeah, Omar.
Omar, where are you?
Okay, hold on.
You're
Okay,
on.
you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I totally agree with Walter, especially in relation to the economic development of Tuxedo. However, as we discussed in the last meeting, there are zoning limitations. So with that said, the only way that I think Tuxedo can compete with other areas in Orange County is to keep raising taxes at bay and to look at other areas within the community to add value to the town and the village while maintaining the integrity of history and landscape. So just to add to some recommendations, what about offering comp time instead of any overtime pay for any position that is paid overtime for the year, the current tax year?
Again, it's a great idea, but Alan, jump in if I'm wrong, but I think that again would have to pass the union.
Okay.
Is that right, Alan?
Sorry about that. Omar, could you ask or re-articulate?
Yeah, what I was saying is, what about instead of paying any overtime pay for any position that warrants overtime pay, offering comp time, so they would get paid time more for extra time accumulated rather than actual pay?
I think there's a couple of issues. One, you're just kicking the ball down the road, but the other issue is we do have PBA contracts, and you know, we have a kind of laundry list of things we will be meeting with you know, the DPW staff and with regard to the PBA, with regard to all of these issues to see where we can get cost savings. And you know, it's early stages in the negotiation with regard to all of that.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I believe that's all for who has raised their, oh, we have another one. Last second, Christine Basilewski.
Christine?
Actually, it's Bo.
Oh, good. Hi.
So I wanted to maybe give a little bit of a perspective from somebody who's a very new resident, you know, having bought less than a year ago. You know, I'd say the biggest attraction, someone touched on it before, but I want to sort of drive this point home. The biggest attraction for us with young kids is being able to actually let our children, you know, not only go out on the roads, take their bikes, et cetera, but also not having to lock the home at night is probably the biggest plus, and something very different. We lived in Warwick for 11 years and didn't feel the same way, despite the fact that, you know, very much a rural, you know, farm town, et cetera. This is a very environment, and I think maybe it's worth sort of mentioning that to people who have lived here for a while. I think a lot of people take it for granted, but for me and my wife, this was an extremely strong selling point. So I actually feel very strongly about, you know, some of the points that were made with respect to not increasing taxes and potentially for trustees in particular to take the lead, and much like every other industry is doing for us to actually take a haircut on pay, at least given this time. But I will say that there are certain components of the budget that I think should remain, and police and security to me, and to us, I should say, is paramount. And I think it's really like someone mentioned before, you know, one of the defining sort of points of so, you know, if I went through your numbers and did some quick math, if I left all of the police related matters, with the exception of the overtime salary, which I wasn't sure about, and then we took a haircut, and instead of, let's say, and I certainly, as a son of an engineer, I understand the value of not trying to band-aid roads. But if you took, let's say, a haircut to the paving thing, and instead of $175,000 in savings, you reduced it to, you know, a $75,000 in savings, you get to pretty damn close to at least 200K. You get to $194,000, and that includes some of the nice revenue ideas that you had mentioned. And my point here is, I think we can get there with a couple of sort of clever shots at this without really destroying the integrity of what this place is probably most not only known for, but also what the, you know, major benefits of Tuxedo are to a lot of the residents, including ourselves. So anyway, those are my two thoughts. And then the last thing I'd say on that police point, just to drive it home even further, is, you know, if you spend a second driving past any gun shop, sadly, you know, lines are building around the corner, right? You don't have to convince too many people here that safety and police protection is something that we should not take for granted. So I just want to make that point that we should not only put the police force in place, or keep them in place. But the gate, the booth project that the mayor supported, I wholeheartedly support, and I hope the trustees would have a second think in light of the circumstances that we're under here. So that's it for me.
Thank you so much. Just to let you know, personally, I moved here 26 years ago to raise my kids. We've never locked our door. I don't know if I want to announce this publicly, or our cars. And sometimes when I go into the city, I accidentally forget that and don't lock. But I think everybody that's living in Tuxedo agrees 100% with that as a major value of living here. So, you know, that can offset things like a road or some other things, but you have to have the security, and you have to be able to feel comfortable behind the gate. Fortunately, you know, you're new. There hasn't been any really serious incidents here. We had, unfortunately, one murder years and years ago. And before that, there was one maybe, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, someone like Sally or Chauncey or somebody might want to chime in on that. But we agree with you 100%. Thank you very much for your comments. John?
I don't see any more hands raised. I'm not sure if you.
Okay, I've got Chauncey.
Chauncey, you may want to.
Chauncey?
Hold on.
Zach,
Oh, hi, Mary.
hi. I can't figure out how to raise my hand, so I'm just going to interrupt.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to put Chauncey right after you then. So go ahead, Mary.
I won't take long. I just wanted, along those lines, I agree that our security is very important. And I really hate to see people use this budget as yet another excuse to not fill the booth. I don't think we have security as all of us who want it without the booth. I, like Lily said a couple of meetings ago, I too have stood up in that seat and looked and recognized that you really can't see in the cars. You can't hear on the radio. They were, at least, I haven't been in and out much in the last month, but they just let everybody in. My daughter and son-in-law laughed that they were going to give the name of our Komodo dragon the next time they came through, because they say Gretzer, and they're not looking at a list. These are not people who recognize this name. They said they were going to say they came to visit Mushu Gretzer and Mushu Voss, when they anticipate that the gate would be raised for that. That wouldn't happen if we had the booth. So I come on, guys. It's been, I think, 5 years now. Let's get that booth back.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people have mentioned the police and the security that they provide. I think they do a terrific job. I think that we have a better opportunity moving forward. Our new chief and I are on the same page regarding community policing. He feels strongly in the booth, about the booth, and there's always room for improvement. I think that if we can move forward with some of these ideas, that people will be even happier with security. Thank you. Can I have Chauncey, please?
Yeah, Mary obviously was reading my mind there. This is a subject that I wanted to ask you about. It wasn't clear to me whether the shortfall of the $16,000 to build the booth is packed into this budget or it is not.
Yeah, a little confusing. The 16 was agreed upon by the trustees several meetings ago, and yet it was not put into the budget, much to my surprise. So let me give you a little history. The survey that we sent out, one of the options was the booth, and it was approved. And then during the process of meeting the conditions of the trustees to approve the booth, they decided that they wanted redundant equipment in the keep. So I said, terrific, but it's not part of my budget. It wasn't on the survey, and I don't think it's fair to people to then add that, but they insisted, and I respect their decision. So what we're talking about here is the booth, which is fully paid for by donations, requires 16 grand plus or minus to be pulled from the tax base to pay for the redundant equipment that the trustees want. My goal would be to eliminate the 16 by eliminating the need for redundant equipment. The chief does not feel we need redundant equipment. I do feel, though, that we should have the ability to raise and lower the gate in the keep in case somebody leaves the booth, goes to the keep, and should be able to continue to open and close the gate. So there are some exceptions to the equipment, but that's the story with the 16.
So are you going to have a crowdfunding thing started?
No, again,
why not?
If the trustees eliminate the need for the redundant equipment, that 16 disappears, and I don't need this.
Well,
I don't need the
I'm
redundant
sorry,
equipment to
but I
build the
don't
booth.
understand. I'm not in the trustees' heads. What was the reason for having redundant equipment?
I'll turn
Can
that
you
over to
sum
one
it
of
up?
the trustees.
Can you sum it up briefly?
Yeah, can one of the trustees sum that up, please?
Which one? Paul?
I will.
Alan?
The building of the booth is controversial. The question about how it'll function and how effectively it function is the question. I wouldn't describe the chief as enthusiastic about the booth. I would describe the chief as having said to me, he can make it work. But in today's world, where you have social distancing, the interior free space of the booth is about 7 feet long and about 5 feet wide. That effectively
8 feet wide.
What's that?
8 feet wide.
No, I'm talking about the free space. I'm talking about the space between the counters on either side. So the maneuverable free space is about 7 feet long and about 5 feet wide. Agree, David?
No, I don't agree, but that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Which means it's effectively one person at a time in a booth. That's the rule regarding social distancing. Keep a 6 feet difference. Whether or not when this virus ends, who knows what the norm is going to be. Whether or not the world is going to insist upon social distancing in workplaces. My recommendation has been that we have a motion to postpone the bill until we know what this new world is going to be. That motion wasn't seconded. But in terms of the redundant equipment in the booth, the majority of the board has decided that we want to have a fully capable keep to backstop the booth. And I agree with that totally.
So there you go.
That's great, but on the other hand, we've never had backup before, and you don't know what the world's going to be like. I agree with that, but I really think you should. That's kind of, a guy in a booth does not a problem make. It was meant for one person, and if you really want this 16 grand, then do a GoFundMe, and all the people that perhaps did vote for the booth might add a little more.
No, I appreciate it. Let me just make some comments. Alan's brought this up before, and we've had this debate. He would like to postpone the booth until 2021 and then have a new reassessment. My view is that, let's just say right now, the booth were open under these conditions, these self-quarantine positions. The chief might not open the booth for a period of time and continue using the key. That would be one way to deal with it administratively. Another option would be to have the booth manned, but not allow the glass sliding door to open and only use the new sophisticated intercom systems so that there would be no spread. So my point is there's a variety of ways to deal with Alan's concerns administratively. And as far as only one person in the booth has a second desk for another officer. And what Alan's referring to, I believe, is that under the social distancing, you couldn't have those two, and he's right. They would have to pass through a narrow corridor to walk by each other. But it is made for two. It's a beautiful interior space. And just to mention security, because that is something everyone's mentioned tonight, and I think it's very important. The booth was designed with bulletproof glass. the same bulletproof glass that is used in the keep. In addition to the windows, I've also designed bulletproof panels to be around the entire interior of the booth, floor to ceiling. And the door to exit and enter the booth is bulletproofed. Now, that's not enough. I'm concerned about another car hitting it. So what I did was I designed the frame out of solid steel. The engineer said that after analyzing it, that it would withstand the impact of a car. So think of it as a shark cage, only really strong, surrounded by all the building materials. And the other thing is that we provided 5 balustrades, excuse me, the units that prevent people from driving through steel and concrete. And that would provide another layer of protection. So, you know, it is a very secure situation. And that's really, you know, in terms of security, the things I've tried to accomplish.
So in other words, the issue now becomes we need 2 of these, one in the keep and one in the booth.
Yeah, we've never had a redundant system before. I don't know where this has come from, but I think the trustees have explained themselves. Yes, we've never had it. I do think, however, that it's worth having a second mechanism to open and close the gate in the keep, not everything else. Because there could be a time when somebody's in the keep after running back and forth from the booth where they might have to open the gates. Another thing we're working on, however, and Alan McHugh's been behind this, is a license plate reader, which we have now. It checks license plates of people coming in and out, looks for felonies, felons, people with warrants, and that's been helpful. But also it could be attached to our system so that the gate can open automatically with by viewing your license plate or tag. Now, that is a tremendous leap forward that I hope we can come to within the next fiscal year. Imagine the police could, you know, be making a bagel and it wouldn't matter.
So in other words, all our U.S. embassies all over the world have those wonderful, you know, those and also the Avis car rentals and all those places that have those retractable tire blasters that come up.
No,
maybe
thanks.
that would be it.
That's a little severe. Thanks, Chauncey. Okay, who else do we have?
Bill Bortnowski, I believe.
Bill Bortnowski, sir. Bill, is your mic on? Your mic is off for Bill.
Yeah.
There
Can
you
you
go.
hear me?
Bill, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Bill Bortnowski, retired police chief. Mayor, you know, I worked there 27 years and I'm listening to everybody's comments tonight. I just want to reemphasize, you know, the people need to appreciate the quality of life that they get to enjoy in Tuxedo Park. There's no place like it. And I can vouch for that, having worked for the village for 27 years. I've seen everything happen. And we're the only private gated community, to my knowledge, in the state of New York that has its actual police department. And everybody works with security guards, and that's where the problems come into play. When Whoopi Goldberg moved here, she told me at the gate, I had the honor of meeting her, and she said, one of the first reasons she thought about when she came here was she heard you have an actual police department. And she said, I love the idea because the security cops rob us blind over in Hollywood. And she really loved this place. She not only bought one house, but she bought another one in a very short time after. But these are things that you have to enjoy, that, as it was brought out earlier, you can come out, walk around the park with your family, your kids. You know, even we talked about leaving your homes unlocked, but I wish you wouldn't. You know, don't make our job harder for us, you know, as it is. But you have something very special, and you know I'm for the booth. I thought you drew up great plans. I am very disappointed as a former chief and employee to see that every time the booth just about gets past, certain individuals very cleverly kick the can further down the road. And that's the God's honest truth. I think you're so close to it right now, don't lose it. The booth was put there because we were moving into a modern era. The world is becoming very complex now. To take the booth away puts us back into the 50s and 60s, and we lose that contact with the public. We lose the ability to screen the vehicles coming in, to see the people close up, not through some little distorted camera where we can't even see into the car. The people love to have that rapport with an officer at the gate. And they used to say when they came home after a hard day in the city, I'm so glad I'm here. I feel so relieved as soon as I get through the gate. And that's the first thing they see. It's an excellent tool for the police department to use to help the people. It only benefits the people in the park, and it deters people from coming up to the gate in the first place who drive by on 17. And one other thing about losing an officer on the night shift, I think that's absolutely, with all due respect, I think it's absolutely ridiculous to even consider such a thought. I know every vulnerability to the park, and what stops somebody from, now that they know about it, this is out publicly, they call in a staged accident. We have a bad accident. There's blood all over the place on the south end of the lake. Officer leaves, and they come right through the gate and hit some houses and leave. And who's there at the police department now to take the call when the resident calls up and says, there's somebody breaking into my house? There's nobody, but there's a cop at the other end of the lake. He doesn't carry a telephone in his car. You're running the department right now on vapors, and if you cut it any further, only the village residents will suffer, and you'll never get it back. So don't lose what you worked so hard to achieve over the course of the years. I thank you for all your hard work, and I really appreciate all the input, from the board, and having a backup system, as far as the gate and the booth is imperative. As Chauncey had brought out why, the reason is simply if the gate gets taken out or gets hit for some reason, you have an immediate backup for the officer to operate the gate mechanism from. When we lost the gate previously, we had to bring in a trailer and sit the thing in front of the main station, for about 7-8 months until the new booth got built back up again. There's a lot of problems that come with it. So don't lose what you have. And, I loved working for the village, and I just want to express my gratitude and appreciation for the years how the people gave it back to me as well when I left.
Thank you, Bill.
So much, and have a good night.
Thank you, Bill. I think your idea, your example of the trailer having to come in for 8 months, it makes a very good point. What I'm gonna do a little housekeeping. I don't know how many more people we have, but it is gonna be a long night. If we have more people, maybe we could keep it very brief, and then I'll leave it up to the trustees as to whether they would like to go through their suggestions, and I can follow, and we can, right in front of you, show you how the sausage is made and start voting on these various conditions. So if that's acceptable to the trustees? Trustees? Okay, so why don't we see who else is available, John, and let's keep it short so we can get into the nitty gritty.
Okay, at this time, I don't see anybody else with their hand raised. I don't know if you want to wait a few seconds.
Sure.
Through the videos now.
Let's wait a few seconds and see. Oh, there's a Brian Nugent sighting, village attorney. Hello, Brian. So this is the last call for comments on this particular hearing. And it sounds like we won't even have to have the next hearing because we are not going to be passing Local Law 1 introductory of 2020 to exempt us from the cap. So trustees, how would you like to move forward?
Mayor?
Sir.
So I would suggest, since we are in the midst of a public hearing on local law number 1, that before there's any further business or discussion on the budget or amendments to the budget, that you probably need to close the public hearing.
My understanding, yeah, oh, absolutely. In terms of local law 1, though, my understanding, Paul, is that if we come in under the cap, we do not need to pass the legislation as long as we, but on the other hand, if we don't bring it below the cap, we would have to then pass the legislation. But before that, we could actually make the budget final. I'll ask Brian, who's on, for some advice on that part.
That doesn't have anything to do with what I was just suggesting, actually. So we're in a public hearing phase?
Correct.
On local law number 1? Your suggestion was to proceed to...
We're not on a hearing in local number 1. We are in a hearing on the continuation of the 220 to 21 budget. The next hearing is the local law, even though it was misprinted on the agenda.
I believe, well, I believe that's incorrect because we closed the public hearing on the budget. It was closed.
No, you left it open.
Till 5 p.m. the following day?
No, you left it open for till 5 p.m. for written, but then I believe the board agreed to keep it open for further comments. Is that a no, everybody?
Yeah, Mayor, I think actually Trustee Gluck may be correct. It was a written comment on the budget hearing, and then we continued the hearing on the local law to exceed the cap with the idea that obviously people's comments with respect to the local law on exceeding the cap would still be relevant. So we continued that till tonight. You can either close that hearing, but that hearing can also stay open through May 1st. I don't know if you're planning to meet again. But you could close it. You do not need to vote yet on adopting or not adopting the local law, but you could just close the hearing, let your budget process go, and then if you're definitely under the cap, there will be no need for you to adopt that local law.
Thank you very much. So in terms of procedure, we would close the hearing, and then would we be debating the budget?
Yeah, then
in
the
terms
board,
of trying to get into a final format to pass.
Then the board itself, the Board of Trustees, will now be working on the budget. If there's any motions to make changes and they're approved, you would go through that process. And if at the end of the day, that budget exceeds the tax cap, you'll need to adopt the local law. If it does not, you don't need to do anything. The public hearing closes and you just don't move to adopt the local law in that case.
Thank you very much, Brian. Paul, would you like to do the honors?
To
close.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing on introductory local law number 1 of 2020.
Second. Second.
Yes, Alan.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Oh, second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so you say that the other was already closed. So it's time for the trustees to look at the options and debate what we are going to cut. And this will be based on everyone's input. You're welcome. I would advise you to stay around. So trustees, would you like to review your presentation from this afternoon and discuss what you think we should or should not cut?
I guess I'd first like to allocate $93,000 from the unallocated surplus to make it an allocated surplus to the 2021 budget.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the amount.
$93,000.
$93,000. And is this a differential between the 120 and the 93?
It's sorry. I think I'm not sure what you're asking. The budget right now, the preliminary budget that you voted on the 17th, that has 123. It's 120,000 surplus, allocated surplus. So an additional 93, which makes it 213 allocated surplus, which brings us to the tax cap. And then talk about further reduction.
All right. So what you're suggesting is you're going to allocate an additional 90 something from the surplus. Well, that certainly does the job there. Would you prefer then not to review any other choices? Are you satisfied with where that brings you?
No, I think we should look at the choices, of course. Anything we do to reduce taxes would be great. I'm not sure what choices we're going to pick, but yes, I'd like to review.
Okay, terrific. Why don't you start to review? One of you can take the lead and review the choices that you've suggested, and we'll discuss them.
Mayor, if I may?
Sir.
Sure. So just for clarity, at least my understanding is that the document that Maureen circulated earlier today that listed various potential options for further cuts were not proposals, suggestions, or endorsements from the board members or any individual ones of them. In other words, those were, and there's some overlap with, I think, some of the things you were suggesting, but they were essentially items that we had picked up from the public and from our prior discussions. And the idea was, as was discussed on April 17th, to put those out in a chart form or a discussion so that people could understand what the next step of cuts could be.
Right.
What kind of dollar amounts we're talking about, and what the cuts have, as many people earlier today said, they have repercussions. So that people
Correct. I'm with you.
some of the costs of those cuts as well. So I'm not sure that there's any here, at least that I would propose as an amendment to the budget. But I think there are some that I think you are proposing as an amendment to a budget or thinking of doing. So maybe we should go through it in that order.
Sure, no problem.
John, can I ask that you mute people, because there's a lot of people that are unmuted and I'm getting a lot of background noise. So the trustees should be unmuted and then everybody else should be muted. I don't know if everybody else is hearing that. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No, no problem. I had just saw your email, so I was about to...
No problem. All right, so I'll just ask, did anyone here receive the email I sent out at about 6:30 with a PDF describing the changes I'd like to suggest? Okay, some of you are saying yes. John, can you post it? Share it?
Yep.
I sent it to you by email.
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you.
I think Ellen, you've got
We
it?
can share that on the screen and then I can go through it.
Is it easier for, okay.
There we go. All right, everybody see that? Okay, let's go right down. I've already read most of this. Let's go right down to the goals I've set. One goal is to reduce it to 90, reduced by 92,653. That's been accomplished, at least put on the table by Maureen, and we'll be voting on that. Personally, I'd like to see it go down much further. I'd like to bring it down another $112,347, which means bringing it down a total of $205,000. Now, if we can do that, we can bring it much further below the cap. In fact, we could meet last year's tax rate, which would be a huge win for the village. So what I've done is I've taken the items that I put together with some with the board, and I've highlighted the ones that I would like you to consider or the board to consider. So I'll start with them. There is this one small item of the $5,000 for police department personnel. Well, we all agree on doing that, so I've highlighted that. The paving is 175. That's a dramatic decrease. That would only allow for pothole repair. The other option on the table is a $90 reduction, which was put there by the trustees, which allows the main roads to be paved, the main arteries, and it does not give up on any potholes. So there's a differential there. And also there's on buildings equipment, Debbie said there was no specific repair known at the time. So that would be an additional reduction of 5. In terms of retirement, Debbie believed that a comparison with last year's billing would allow us to drop another 10. With workman's comp, Debbie felt that we could take down another 10. With street maintenance and equipment, we have a surplus this year. So that is road cones and signage and other things, detour signs that the DPW uses. And I don't think there'd be too much of an impact, but using the last year's surplus, we can get another 4,000. We are planning to get a dump truck for the DPW, a new dump truck. And it's something like $35,000, $36,000 a year in payments for a while. Maybe Alan McHugh could tell me how long. But the suggestion here is to wait a year for the dump truck. That will have an effect on DPW. I don't know what type necessarily, but it will have some effect. Snow removal. We have a large surplus of salt. We didn't have the overtime and salary payments because the winter was very light. Now, the taking out that surplus this year would bring down another 10. Of course, the risk is if we have a severe winter. And that goes as well for the contract and removal for snow. That's another 20 grand because it is also a surplus. And then we can stream down further to the next page, John, if that's what you're doing. Thank you. And I'm calling for the elimination of the recreation budget because unfortunately things are closed anyway for COVID. And that budget, I believe, and the trustees can correct me if I'm wrong, that might have been some maintenance at the Weewa Beach Club. And finally, we discussed this booth issue. Right now, there's money that would have to come out of taxes because of the addition of redundant equipment. So if I take all of those things and add them up, this does not include revenues. I don't think we need to do that. It doesn't include cutting police. It does include the roads, which has been contentious. But that would give us, if you can slide back up there, John, that would give us, if you go to the top of the graph right there, that would give us a reduction, if you add those things up, to almost $300,000. So if we were to accept these, we would be doing very well. We would meet last year's tax rate, which is way below the 2%, and maybe even further. Could you imagine? But these are tough cuts. It's going to take a lot, fortitude. The sacrifices will be made by all the departments. But if I were to ask if there was a draconian cut, it would be the difference between my suggestion of not doing any paving, just pothole repairs, and the trustee's suggestion of only deducting 90, which would only cover main arteries, which I think is also a good choice. So if you were to take the differential there, we would still be very close to meeting goal number 2, which I set for us. So with that, I'll open it up to the trustees to see if what they think of my proposal. So thank you. You want to leave that up, or do you want to? I guess we should leave it up for the trustees if they haven't seen it. Trustees, have you seen it? Do you have a copy?
I have a copy.
Okay. How about all the other trustees? Hello?
I do.
Okay. Mr. McHugh, Trustee McHugh?
Yeah, I can see it in front of me.
Okay, but do you have a copy on your desk so I can take this down, or you want me to keep this up?
No, you can take it down. I can talk to it if need be.
How about Alan Barnett? Trustee Barnett, do you have a copy?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, I guess for the public, I'll leave it in case they didn't get a chance to download it before the meeting. So I'll give the floor over to the trustees, and I'd like to hear their comments.
I'll give you my comment since nobody else is going to speak. I'm not going to comment on something I've just seen 10 minutes before a meeting. So that's first and foremost. A lot of these things were already discussed at last Friday's meeting. And we went through a lot of these proposals. Some of the ones you're asserting that Debbie agreed to, we didn't, and we had a variety of reasons why we believed they were inaccurate. Obviously, the biggest line item is the paving. I certainly do not subscribe to massive cuts with regard to that, and I agree with Jay's comment. It's just kicking the bucket down, and it just becomes a far greater problem at a later date. So I'm not a huge fan. Are there nominal cuts? Yes. With regard to user fees, I am certainly a fan of increasing them. I know it's not a popular thing, but the residents pay a lot of taxes to live here. quite a few of these revenue increases don't necessarily have a direct effect on them and are people using our infrastructure. So those are my general comments with regard to it. I'd be more than happy to have a meeting next week and do a deep dive of these and give you a more educated response to them, but that's my off-the-cuff response.
No, I appreciate it. Just to make a comment, you said that this just came out. So did the trustees. That was sent out this afternoon. So even though you and I have seen it, the public has not seen it. And then the other thing I wanted to say, just to correct, what you said about Debbie. No, these in fact were not deemed to be unacceptable or inappropriate or false. These are things that Debbie presented to us that the trustees only took a portion of, so they're back in to see if we can revisit them. So it wasn't something that was done intentionally to sneak something by you. You just pointed it out very clearly. So I hear what you're saying, Alan, and I certainly appreciate it. Are there any here that you would consider, or would you prefer to wait?
I mean, for me personally, I prefer to wait and have a look at it. The only thing I'll beg to differ on is the last Board of Trustee meetings, we heard a lot from the residents with regard to a pushback for any form of tax increase. And I think people don't necessarily understand the process, which is we originally get a budget proposal from the department heads. From there, a preliminary budget's done. Then there's some revisions. Then we come up with a preliminary budget, which is presented. And from there, and the process, historically, we've always had the optionality with regard to establishing the need for a tax increase. Obviously, we all, as taxpayers, certainly don't want it, but we don't want it to negatively affect what we've gotten used to. And I think this has been actually a shockingly good exercise in making people assess what they do and do not want within the village. And I think that's hugely beneficial. So I'm more than happy to do a deep dive on these, give you a more educated response next week, and we can set up a budget workshop to do that if need be.
I appreciate it. Well said. Let's hear from Paul.
Sure. So I think tonight was very, very helpful in hearing what people had to say, and as expected, there's somewhat of a divergence of views. I think these are items we do have to go through item by item. They're one at a time. In terms of an overall perspective, I remember a time not long ago when we made a commitment sort of to ourselves and to the community that we were not going to follow in the path of past boards and kick needed infrastructure and regular maintenance items down the road, that we were going to take care of what had to be taken care of on a regular basis and not leave these problems to future administrations and to future years. So I'm not a fan of taxes. I'm a taxpayer here as well. I like to keep taxes down as low as possible. I think we engage in a process that does that. This is the last of the most recent of a number of meetings at which the budget and the budgetary process was pushed and probed and poked and massaged and gotten with an effort to keep taxes as low as they possibly can be kept. And there may well be some items on here that we can get them down a little bit lower. There's sort of a process of going through those one by one. But again, taking scheduled and necessary items of maintenance and moving them to to another year just is not a prudent and attractive mode of proceeding as a general matter.
I agree. We did agree to fix our infrastructure and put it on some sort of regular system. And one of the main reasons we did that was so that each time there was a turnover in the board, we wouldn't lose that momentum. And we all feel very strongly about that. The situation we're facing today is extreme. So making exceptions to those agreements or proposing changes to those agreements, to me, seems appropriate considering the drastic circumstances that have been posed by COVID and the fact that it's a very tough year for people to take increases. And in that case, maybe we have to show some flexibility and pause certain projects. But again, this is a beautiful thing. This is all about these discussions, and I'm happy that we're having them. Maureen?
I'm on. Okay. So I agree with Alan McHugh that it probably makes the most amount of sense to have another meeting to go through each of the items. Again, each of these items were discussed on many of the items, not all of them, were discussed on April 17th. And again, on April 17th, we just came up with a list of possible cuts. So we've heard from the public tonight. And for instance, I think the public comment was great, very informative. We had this was an excellent exercise and we had tons of people on the phone. So like one of the insights that I learned is don't touch the police staffing or officers. So that would be something I would probably take off this list. But everything else we should probably talk about on a separate session and go through it very, very thoroughly in light of what we learned tonight.
I respect that. Trustee Barnett?
I have looked at this list, and I've looked at the list we drew up this afternoon, and I could go through tonight these items. I think it'd take a couple hours, but I could do that. I think realistically that we're going to there's some items. I mean, the big item is road paving, and I think that's just a judgment call. But others are fairly obvious. I mean, one way or the other. So I could happily go through a couple hours longer, but I also see the merit in what Alan and Paul and now Maureen are saying. So I think probably the better course is to look at and have one more meeting, as much as I hate to have one more meeting.
We have had quite a few. Thank you, Alan. No, I'm fine with that, guys. I think we should go ahead and do that. That said, would you, Brian or John? Okay, is everyone off?
Yeah, we're here. What's the question now?
Okay, Brian, I'm just wondering, procedurally, we're going to be extending this discussion. Technically, how would you like me to approach that in terms of resolutions, motions, and so forth?
Yeah, so your public hearings are closed, so at this point, you're just scheduling another meeting. You can either do that now, but you're still going to have to send the notice and post it in the normal fashion, whatever date and time you're going to have the meeting. And that's really it. So if you want to decide a date and time, you can announce it for the benefit of the people that are on here now, and then put it on the website and send it over to the media and the usual notices.
Terrific. Okay, so trustees, do you have any preferable dates?
Sooner rather than later, clearly. The only day, as I said before, I have a problem on Thursday until 1:30 in the afternoon. But after 1:30, I'm available on Thursday. And the only other conflict I have is at 9:30 on Friday morning.
Thank you. Trustee Barnett?
Available any evening. My preference is another 7 o'clock meeting. I think we have a good attendance. We had a 9 o'clock meeting Friday. We had hardly anybody there, and I'm all in favor of having many people listen in who want to listen in. So I think 7 o'clock seems to be a better time. So anytime next week, anytime, I can make any 7 o'clock meeting.
Ryan, what is our deadline?
I've got no plans to be out of the house.
Yeah, not many people do. Brian, what's the deadline?
A week from Friday is May 1st, so that's the last possible day that you could meet and adopt the budget.
I appreciate that. Trustee McHugh, what is your schedule?
I certainly have a preference for morning. I think, the public, can take comfort in the fact that we've been able to get ourselves under the tax cap, which I think is the big issue. I think their input has been given, it's been listened to, and I personally would be happy to have it this week or next week, but my personal preference is in the morning. I hear Alan Burnett's comment, but I really don't think the public input with regard to this is going to necessarily be as great as it was. Obviously, we've got their input. They've seen the selection of options that we're all considering, and they've given us their biased or unbiased opinion on what they think of the different action items and the relative merits of them. So I think we're going to make the decision. I think they can rest assured that we'll be under the tax cap, and I think that assuages the concerns there. And it's really more a question for us to determine what services we're willing to give up or we think is appropriate. And with regard to deferring capital expenses, which is basically a lot of what this is all about.
Thank you, appreciate it. I will take my turn. I think that I agree with Alan. Now, the public actually, unless we were to make a comment section, would not have any input. So we don't have to worry about them repeating themselves or giving us information that they already have. The issue, though, in doing it in front of the public is so that they can see the discussion, that it's transparent and open. And so I think that's very important for the public to be able to participate. Therefore, and plus I'm not a morning person, I would rather do it at 7, like Trustee Barnett had suggested. Trustee Gluck, what are your thoughts?
I'm sympathetic to that. I would personally prefer morning, but like many personal things, I will accommodate myself to an evening session.
Okay, so we're going to have it at 7. Now, what night works for everybody? I am open.
So am I.
Thursday night, 7 p.m.
Do you want to give it till Friday, or do we have plans Friday? I'm just thinking that we can have a little more time to digest.
Thursday is the first night NFL draft. That'll be the.
Oh no, we can't do it
That's the most
Thursday.
entertaining thing on television.
Have you been watching that Michael Jordan documentary? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Paul, does Friday work for you?
Friday night at 7?
Why don't we do Monday?
The weekend.
Monday at 7? Yeah, that works for me. Anybody opposed to Monday at 7? Okay, Monday at 7 it is. Let's the record reflect that. Any final comments from the trustees?
Can I chime in here? It's Michelle, sorry.
Where are you? Oh, hi, Michelle. Yes.
Hi. Monday is the public hearing on the town village consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Michelle.
Understood. Okay. So we could do Friday or Tuesday. How about that? A week from today.
Sounds like Tuesday, right, everybody?
Everybody good?
I mean, my own personal opinion is the longer we delay this, the better off we are, because we have greater granularity with regard to what our invoices and expenditures are. So we're going to know where we are in this calendar year. So delaying it an additional day, given the comfort I think we've provided people after this meeting, seems like that to me is not a big issue. So I'd say Tuesday's fine by me.
Yeah, actually, very good point, because we have surpluses. We don't know exactly where they're going to end up when the quarter closes. Okay, so let the record show that the Board of Trustees will be meeting, a special meeting on Thursday, this next Thursday. Anybody have a date on that?
Tuesday.
Tuesday? I thought you wanted to delay it further.
Oh, sorry. I mean, that might be a stretch just for Debbie to publish the notices and everything. So I don't want, she's already going gray and she's wanting to retire. I don't want to go quicker.
politically incorrect. Okay, so is Thursday okay, Alan, then? Or would you prefer Tuesday? Back to Tuesday.
Tuesday.
All right, so let the record show that the Board of Trustees will be holding a special meeting, 7 p.m. on Tuesday, April 28th. 28th. Is that acceptable? May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so this meeting is adjourned. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it. See you
Good night,
next
all.
Tuesday.
This was good. This was a great meeting.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you had great attendance, 65 people.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
You had a record for at least the ones I've handled.
We'll do this more often.
So I'd love to meet you at the bar, but the bar's closed.
All right, good night, everybody.
Have a good
Talk to you
drink,
later.
David.